While society is aware of sexual violence against women and girls, male survivors of sexual assault tend to be forgotten due to the blame, the shame, and the stigma that comes with it. The public and some healthcare providers may hear the word sexual assault and automatically assume that men are the perpetrators. That is not the case. Seeing men as the targets of sexual violence is difficult for society to comprehend. As we address the problem of sexual violence against girls and women, it is also important that we consider violence against men and boys who often experience serious psychological and emotional fallout, depression and anxiety. Welcome to Issues Pane Nyaya. Ndinonzi Rejoice Naraunda Makawa, together with Sipo Setland on Sign Language. This week, Issues Pane Nyaya visited Mashonaland East Province, where we spoke to Tendai. Tendai is a 21-year-old young man who shared with us a very sad and touching story. Tendai was allegedly sexually assaulted at a public institution in 2017, and the matter was never reported up until 2021, when the young man got the courage to speak out. Tendai outlines the struggles of disclosing and seeking justice. He goes on to tell how he was infected with an STI and is now getting support. Let's hear more from the following story. We are at Shayanuwako village, the place called home, where we come across so many different stories that affect families, that affect young people, that affect women, that affect girls. And a lot of times we are covering the woman's story, we are covering the girl's story. Tiri kutaura nyaya dzekumbunyikidzwa kwemwanasikana, tiri kutaura nyaya dzekubatwa chibharo kwemwanasikana. Kazhinji kacho kashoma kuti tiwanzobata nyaya dzinosanganikwa nadzo nevanakomana. Asi nhasi tamboti timbotaura nyaya yemwanakomana watinaye pano anonzi Tendai. Tendai tinokugamuchira paissues Pane Nyaya.
Tinotenda nemukana wamatipa.
Vari kuteerera nevari kuona nevari kunzwa vangangoda kumbotanga nekuziva kuti anombonzi Tendai uyu ndiani, akabva nekupi kuti tizosvika munyaya yatoda kusvika nhasi.
Tendai mwana akazvarwa nevabereki vakadai kushaya. Tendai akakura upenyu hwekuchengetwa mudzimba dzakasiyana nekuda kwokuti vabereki vakange vashaya. Tendai munhu ane makore 21. Tendai mukomana asati aroora.
Toda kutaura nyaya yako yauinayo yaungade kuti nyika yeZimbabwe inzwe. I don't want to preempt kana kukuendera pamberi kuti ukurukire nyaya yezvawakasangana nazvo. Ungade kuti kurukurira here kuti zvakafamba sei, chii chakaitika kwauri?
Munoziva upenyu hweunherera, unoda kuzvininipisa, unoda kugara panzvimbo imwe chete. Asi kana uchinge uchimuvha uchiendeswa kunzvimbo dzakasiyana, kune zvinhu zvakawanda zvinotaurika mushure mekunge uchigara nevanhu vakasiyana, nekuti mumwe nemumwe ane murerero wake wakasiyana. Saka zvino apa ndakazenge ndakurerwa nambuya nyakubereka mai, ndakagara navo form 3 neform 4. Pakaita nhau yekuti mbuya vakange vaita mari mukadhi rekubhengi. Saka sekunge ndiri munhu aigara nambuya, zvizhinji ndindaizviziva sekuti pini nezvakawanda-wanda. Asi pakaita nhau yekuti pakatorwa mari mukadhi, bank account, neway inonzi banked wallet kana kuti zipit. Saka zvakaita kuti pave netsvagurudzo yekunzi ndiani angange atora mari. Ini ndakange ndisipo panguva yakaitika zvese izvi, asi zvichitaurwa zvinonzi zvakaitika mumadhetsi andakanga ndiripo. Saka ndakange ndiri kuHarare, ndobva ndafonerwa ndiri kuHarare nemunhu wandandisingazivi with an unknown number. I was at Joiner City by that time. Munhu akandifonera akati, Tendai uri papi? Ndikati Tendai ari muJoiner City. Zvikanzi haukwanisi here kubuda neentrance kufootbridge paJoiner City. Ndikati it's okay, ndokwanisa kubuda napo. Ndichinge ndabuda paya ndakaona varume vana vakanditeera mashure mangu. Ndokubva vanditi ndiwe unonzi Tendai? Ndikati aiwa ndini. Zvikanzi tisita kufonera. Saka pavakati tisita kufonera ndakafunga kuti ndakazvitongesa kuti vangange vari vanhu vekupi kana kuti vange vangana nani. From there ndakanzoenda muhardboard. There was a car yanga iripo chakaita kuti mwoyo wangu udekare udzikame pamberi pehadhibhodhi iyi pakanga paine mota yaiva yamainini munin'ina waamai. Saka hana yangu yakagona kunodekara, ndikati panenge pane zvinenge zvaitika asi vanhu vasingade kunditsanangurira. Ndikaendeswa kuchitungwiza kumba kwamainini vakanga vaine mota iya yandakange ndaona. Ndo pandakatanga kuona chiso chamainini, ndobva ndaziva ndikati zvimwe pane zvaitika. Ndakapinda mumba asi zviso zvaiva nevanhu vakanga vari mumba zvainge zvakasuruvara sekunge vanhu avo vafirwa, asi zvairatidza kuti zviso izvi zviso zvevanhu vakagumbuka zvisingaite vakatsamwa. Pamusoro paizvozvo ndakaerakana ndaiswa ngetani dzatinoti cheni kutosungwa, asi munhu akandisa cheni ndisekuru ndigadhi kuno imwewo security company. Zvikandishamisa kuti ko security guard vakundisunga kwaitikei.
Saka mushure mekunge wasungwa wakaramba wakachengetwa pamba here kana kuti wakaendeswa police station here kana kuti zvakafamba sei?
Ndakaendeswa ndo patakasimuka kubva kuchitungwiza tikauya pamusha pambuya. Tisvika mbuya vakanga vasipo, pakanga paine vamwe vana nevamwewo vazukuru nevana vavo. Hatina kugarisapo.
Ungori mucheni?
Ndirimo mucheni. Ndokubva tasimuka paya ndokubva taenda kupolice station. Asi pakaita nhau yebvunzurudzo kuti ngetani dzine mukomana uyu dzabva kupi. Vakabvunzana vakapindurana, asi ndakabva ndaiswa kuseri kwatinoti kuseri mucharge office.
Ndoda kuti tifambe tinosvika pane zvakaitika kwauri. Tanzwa zvakakomberedza kuti pane zvakanga zvaitika, pane kushayikwa kwemari nekudidi zvazokonzeresa kuti upedzisire mumapurisa kunzvimbo yawakanga uriyo tisingaitaure zvedu nezita nekuda kuichengetedza zita rayo. Asi wazopinda mumapurisa, wapinda kuseri, wabvisiswa bhutsu, wamuusungwa hwemapurisa. Chititaurira kubvira ipapo.
Ndavemo muusungwa, pakaita mupurisa IO akava nekubvunzurudza kwake kwenyaya, ndikamutsanangurira sekuziva kwandaita nyaya iyi. Asi ini chakandishamisa, ndichipinda muusungwa handina kuiswa muchitokisi matinenge tichiti mumacells. Ndakaiswa muofisi. Ndakangofunga kuti ameno sekunge ndange ndiri munhu asati ambopinda.
Wangoine makore mangani nguva iyo yaiitika zvinhu izvi kwauri? Wangoine 17? Okay.
Saka ndange ndisandane ruzivo rwekuti mupolice station makamira sei. Ndadaro ndokubva murume uya akanditanga andirova mambama matatu. Ndakanzwa kurwadziwa kwakadarikidza. Akandidzosera futi mahandcuffs, but this time akandidzosera neckback. So ndakadai. And then after that sekunge ndanga ndiri munhu akanga akapfeka kashoti kadiki, ndopa ndibvisa shoti riya. Asi handida kuziva kuti murume uyu akanga aine chinangwa chake. Mushure mekudaro ndokubva abvisa nguo dzake, ndokubva amanikidza kurara neni. Asi pakurara neni apa akandivhara muromo. Murume uyu aiva neruoko ruhombe rwokuti dai rwakandivhara. Paakanga akandivhara handina kukwanisa kuburitsa inzwi rimwe chete, ende handina kukwanisa kumuita anything nekuti ndakange ndakasungwa. Ndokubva arara neni. Hapana akauya, hapana akadii, hapana mupurisa akaonekera usiku hwacho. Kekutanga ndokubva arara neni. Kechipiri patombotora nguva refu.
Usiku ihwohwo muchete
akataura akati, iwe handiti hauna mari yekundibhadhara. This was a way of kundibhadhara yandashandisa. Saka zvandichaita ndoda kutsanangurira mutemo wandiri kushandisira pano. Mhosva yauri kuda kusungwa nayo inonzi fraud, but fraud yachona haisati yaane evidence. Ndizvoka. Saka iwewe kuti nezvandaita izvi ndakukwanisa kukuburitsa, since vanhu vari kukusungisa vasina evidence yekuti ndiwe wakazviita. Saka zvatichaita mangwana kuseni mapurisa asati auzoripota pavanoti paparade, iwewe ndichadedza taxi panze apo, ndichakutorera taxi wopinda mutaxi, ndokupa mari woenda kwauchaenda. Padosara pauya vanhu iwe unenge waenda. Ndakati Mwari maita henyu, this was my way out, not knowing kuti hazvina kunaka. Ndokubva mangwana makuseni aya akangondimutsa, ndobva ndabuda, ndobva ndipa mbatya dzangu, ndobva ndapfekera zvandakaita, ndobva ndidzosera foni yangu.
Ndiri kuona uchitaura nyaya iyi uchitanga uri kudzamisa pfungwa. chii chinouya mupfungwa dzako kana uchitaura tisati taenderera hedu pamberi, kana uchiremember uchidzokera kumashure unonzwa sei?
Ndinonzwa kurwadziwa zvikuru pamwoyo, nekuti chekutanga chinouya mupfungwa dzangu ndechekuti nyaya yacho yandakazoita kuti ndiende kupolice station, it wasn't my fault, yange isiri mhosva yangu. Chechipiri, ndozosangana nezvinhu zvakaita saizvozvo mushure mekunge usina mhosva, zvinhu zvinorwadza.
Alright, tazofamba taenda pamberi neupenyu. Zvakazodii utano hwako, pfungwa dzako nepawaveiko zvino?
Pakazova nenguva yekuti ndakangotanga kunzwa kurwara nezvinhu zvisinganzwisisike. Nhasi unonzwa ndiri kurwara nemusoro, musoro wacho uchirwadza zvekurwadza chaizvo. Nhasi unonzwa mudumbu, nhasi unongonzwa kupera simba, nhasi unogona kubhilidha. Saka zvinhu zvakaita kuti ndifambe ndichifunga kuti saka chii chiri kuitika. Nhasi unogona kukosora ufunga kuti saka chii chiri kuitika. Then zvakazondita kuti nditange kufunga kuti nekuda kunge uchigara pasi neshamwari uchitaurana kuti ndozviri kuitika, zvakandituma kuti ndinzwe kuti ko ndadii kumbonotariswa, kunotestwa kana kunoongororwa kachiremba kuti chii chiri kuitika mukati menyama dzangu. Zvino ndo zvakazoita kuti ndifambe ndikaenda kuHarare mutown, ndikaenda kuNew Start Center ndikanoongororwa ropa. Mushure mekuongororwa ropa pakabuda zvirwere zvakatsanangurwa. Chekutanga chavakanditaurira vakatonditora vakati very sorry and we are very sorry kuti you are now HIV positive. Saka zvinhu zvinogara zvichinetsa mupfungwa kuti so ndakawana chirwere.
Saka iye zvinoizvi wapakurapwa zvako uri pakuonekwa. Kune mwanakomana wezera rako kana mwanasikana ari kuteerera nyaya yako, ari kunzwa pamwe ari kutyawo kutaura, kana ari kutya kubuda pachena, kana ari kutya kutsvaga rubatsiro. Unoti chii kumwana ari munzvimbo yawaive iwewe pawakasangana netsaona uine 17 years?
Ndinokurudzira kuti pachinge paitika zvinhu zvakaitika saizvozvo, tsvaga ruzivo rwekuenda kwekubatsirwa, usatya, usanyara kutaura kuti ukasike wawana rubatsiro. Uchiri mwana mukomana mudiki, tatombotaura zviya kuti pamwe pane chimhandara chingatoda kuwanikwa newe upenyu hukaenderera pamberi. Unoona sei ramangwana rako nepauriko zvino? Ndinoona ramangwana rangu risina kumboshanduka. Ramangwana rangu rakare ndiroro rimwe chete, harigone kushandurwa nezvakaitika. Tsaona dzinowanikwa muvanhu hazvigone kutiuraya pfungwa dzedu kana mavisions edu atanga tinawo eupenyu. Chinodiwa kuita step forward, look forward, backward never.
Aiwa, tinotenda tendai nekuuya nekukurukura nyaya yako. Ndo mamwe mabasa atinoita pano paShaya Newako Village, the place called home. We speak to young people, they tell their stories, and we help where we can. We facilitate as far as we can. From here, we're going back to studio. Welcome to the second segment of Issues Pane Nyaya. In the first segment, we heard a sad story of a young man who was sexually abused at a public institution back in 2017, only for that matter to be reported this year. The most worrisome thing that I personally discovered from this story is that men are reluctant to report sexual assault for fear of being judged by society. Why didn't you fight back? Were you enjoying it? These are some of the questions that male survivors are often asked. As Issues Pane Nyaya, we just want to delve deeper and find out what some of the referral pathways might be for males who are victims or survivors of sexual violation, people that go through what Tendai went through as they seek assistance. And we're just going to look at this from both a medical and legal point of view. We're also going to just tackle this issue just from the police perspective to hear kuti kana zvichinge zvadai zvinombofamba sei. And we have in studio today Chief Superintendent Jesse Banda from the ZRP Victim Friendly Unit. She's going to take us through some of the processes that are available at the police for male sexual abuse survivors like Tendai. We also have Dr. Musa Kika. He's a constitutional and human rights lawyer. And then we have Rodoma Shingaidze from the Adult Rape Clinic, and they're going to share with us medical and psychosocial support systems that are available for survivors of sexual violation. Welcome to Issues Pane Nyaya. Tinokugamchira Chief Superintendent, welcome to Issues Pane Nyaya.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Dr. Musa, welcome to Issues Pane Nyaya.
Thank you, Ms. Makawa. Good afternoon to you.
Rudo, it's good to have you back on Issues Pane Nyaya.
Thank you so much for having us.
Now, maybe we should just start with you, Chief Superintendent Banda, and just look at it. This issue supposedly, allegedly happened at a police station, where the young man had been arrested and detained. He wasn't put in a cell. You heard that story. Do you maybe just want to give us a commentary based on what that young man shared?
Thank you. Like you heard, the boy then was 17 years old. So according to the laws of Zimbabwe, he was still a child, and the children are never put in cells. We don't mix children and adults in cells. And it's unfortunate that he was handcuffed. Children are not supposed to be put in cells, neither are they supposed to be handcuffed, unless they are posing a great danger, you know. But that's how children are supposed to be treated. So when he was put in that office, maybe simply because the issue was at home, so he was supposed maybe to be released in the custody of a guardian. Maybe the guardians at home, they didn't want him because of the issues that they had. But the police officers, they were supposed maybe to call in the social welfare department. Those, they will act as the parent of the child for that moment. And they were the ones who were supposed to come and be with the boy and act as a parent, and also maybe place him in a shelter or a place of safety. That's how it is supposed to be. He wasn't supposed to be handcuffed. And
just talking about handcuffs, Chief Superintendent, he talks about being handcuffed by a sekuru, vachiri kumba. How does that work in terms of a security guard somewhere handcuffing somebody, and then someone being in handcuffs allegedly for a number of hours? How does that pan out in terms of the law from a police perspective?
I think the lawyer here will best explain it, because, you know, as Zimbabweans, we have got those powers of citizen arrest. But when you have got that power to arrest somebody, you have to do it like a police officer would do it. This is a child. You are not supposed to handcuff them. So you are simply supposed to take them from wherever they are and to the police without doing that, because the law, it empowers people to arrest, you know, what people usually call a citizen arrest, without assaulting anybody, without handcuffing them, without humiliating them, like we normally do. We beat up people, isn't it, when they've been found committing a crime, and then we escort them to the police. But the Sekuru was within his rights, but he erred by handcuffing the child.
Can we have your thoughts there, just an overall overview commentary on this scenario that we have at hand?
Indeed, I totally agree with the Chief Superintendent. This would probably not have happened if the proper child justice protocols had been followed. This minor was never supposed to have found himself in this situation in the first place. The manner of arrest, Chief Superintendent mentioned the processes that happen when someone is being arrested. Our Constitution, our Criminal Procedure and Evidence Act are very clear. You arrest someone in a humane way, you explain their rights, you tell them there and then why they are being arrested. In the case of a minor, you never take them to a place of interrogation or a place of detention without a parent, without a guardian, or without calling the Department of Social Welfare, who are the custodians of children in terms of our child protection procedures. There at the police station, he was never supposed to have been detained. This minor was detained for 48 hours and was never formally charged. So even to this day, he was never formally charged. So a lot of illegalities happened there. In terms of our law, our constitution, in terms of the Children's Act, Section 84, you can't detain a minor prior to conviction, either in a police station, either in a remand prison, or in any place of lock-up. You can't do that. You only do that, number one, when it's necessary, and number two, when you haven't found a suitable remand place, a suitable place of safety to put this child. And in this case, there is no evidence, at least as far as we can see, that that was done. We don't know whether the police tried to look for a place. We can't tell. But the reality is there is no record because this child was never formally charged. So whatever was happening was clearly outside the confines of the law.
Now we know that you, your organization, and you might just want to tell us a little bit about that. You are actually working with Tendai now. How is he? Where are we at in terms of this case?
Yes, so eventually we got to know of this case, and we took up this case to assist Tendai with legal services to report. This is 4 years after the crime was committed in 2017. Fortunately, our Criminal Procedure and Evidence Act gives a space of 20 years within which a crime can be reported and investigated.
Okay.
20 years is the prescription period. So this case is still within those bounds. So what we did, the first thing we had to do was to report this case. We went to Harare Central Police Station with Tendai, and we reported this case together with him. We then went for medical examinations because we need a medical report as part of that docket. That was done. We have since obtained the medical record. We now await for the transmission of the docket from Harare Central Police Station to the local police station where this happened. And once the docket has arrived there, investigations have to commence. And we are going to be tracking the process throughout until Tendai gets justice.
You mentioned medical reports, and that's where you come in, Rudo, with the work that you are doing with ARC. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that work?
Right, thank you very much. Even before we get to the issue of the medical report, because what is contained in the medical report are the physical findings of an examination. But unfortunately, in that medical report, we do not get an opportunity to report the psychosocial findings. And I was listening with dismay at what this young man was detailing. First of all, he was ambushed from Joina City, and he endured some form of trauma that something has happened. In our context, normally that happens when somebody very close to you has died and people are trying to preserve you and only break it to you when you are safe. So can you imagine between Joina City and Chitungwiza what was going on in his head, and then having to perceive these tense faces, and then ultimately being put into handcuffed, and then being taken to the... It's an entire traumatic experience that this young man had, which no doubt, I'm sure he's still enduring that trauma because the psychosocial effects are long-standing. Fast forward to the medical examination. Yes, we do perform the medical examination, and I must hasten to say it's very unfortunate that, especially in instances of male sexual assault, sometimes there is very little evidence seen. And this is, in his instance, for starters, because by virtue of the anatomical build-up, there are not necessarily opportunities for visible injuries to be noted, even if an examination is done early.
And 4 years later,
and
in
then
this
4
particular
years
case,
later, you can imagine it is likely that the bulk, if not all, of the would-be evidence is no longer visible. But that does not mean to say that this incident did not happen. And again, for me personally, the issue is, while what was tangible is no longer visible, but what is not tangible and is going on in his mental state, in his social state, is existing and is debilitating him health-wise. And on top of that, he has an infection to go with it that nobody can ever take away. And this is all one of the biggest challenges that males encounter, especially.
Do we have, Dr. Musa, a constitutional and legal framework for the protection of against sexual violence in Zimbabwe?
We do. Our Criminal Law Codification and Reform Act. It provides a number of sexual offenses. Indecent assault, rape, aggravated indecent assault. We also have a law of sodomy in that act. Unfortunately, our law around sexual offenses is gendered. For instance, a woman in terms of our law cannot rape. She is said to have indecently assaulted someone in aggravating circumstances. So in this particular case, this young boy, the offense would be aggravated indecent assault.
It's not, we put rape.
Yes.
So men cannot be raped?
Men cannot be raped. That is what it says. This is, where did we get this from? We inherited it from old English law. And we have kept it in our statute books up to now. But our neighbors, like Namibia, South Africa, who had also adopted this stance, have since reformed. In the case of Namibia, they changed in 2000. South Africa changed in 2007. It's now rape. Where there is penetration, whether by a physical, a bodily organ or an object, it's rape. In our country, unfortunately, it's not. That doesn't affect the penalty. The penalty is similar for aggravated indecent assault and rape. But still, naming is power. When I say that minor was raped in a police station, it's different in the eyes of a member of the public to say he was indecently
sexually assaulted
in a police station. So
yeah.
Naming is power. It's the old cliche of what's in a name. Naming is power. It has determinations in terms of social perception of the reprehensibility of a particular crime. So that is where we are at the moment.
Chief Superintendent, it's 4 years later that someone is walking into one of your police stations to report a case. And we heard that there's a 20. Do you want to just comment on kuti tinongodzwa mosha aiori? Do you want to just come in there for the benefit of our viewers?
Yes, like you have heard that the prescription of the crime is 20 years. So anybody can report from the moment it happens up until maybe 20 years later. But we always advocate for people to report early, you know, because 4 years later, it means we'll have to reconstruct the scene. And in reconstructing the scene, you'll find that maybe there will be a lot of gaps. Maybe the perpetrator is no longer there. Maybe they are gone or they are dead. Maybe some witnesses who might have given that evidence, maybe they are not there or they are dead. Or some people have simply forgotten
about it.
They don't remember, you see. So there are all those things that come in, and it complicates the whole process. And also at the end of it all, if you look at it, usually it is the perpetrator who stands to win at the end of it, because we have to prove that it is the perpetrator who did this. And the burden is on us now to find evidence to link him. And when all even the environment has changed, the people have forgotten, and maybe the evidence which was supposed to be captured then cannot be captured, it becomes very difficult. So that is the main problem that we have with the late reports, especially from males. You know, as they debate on whether to go and report or not to report, you know, evidence will be lost. And then it becomes a very difficult case to pursue.
We're going to take a break, but before I'd like to ask you a question that you will answer after the break, Dr. Musa. And the question is, late reporting, does that affect legal outcomes of the case? So we are taking a break. We will be right back. Don't go away. Generally, society has a tendency of shying away from tackling matters that disrupt the status quo. Instead, such discussions are either avoided. As a result, attitudes are created and truth reinvented. On this platform, we dare to venture into those territories. This is Issues Pane Nyaya. Welcome to the third and final segment of Issues Pane Nyaya, and we are talking survival after rape. We will call it rape. There's power in naming, says Dr. Musa. Sexual assault can happen to anybody, no matter your age, your sexual orientation, or gender identity. Men and boys who have been sexually assaulted or abused may have many of the feelings and reactions as other survivors of sexual assault, if not more. But they may also face some additional challenges because of social attitudes, stereotypes about men and masculinity. They may feel ashamed, they may feel shocked, they may feel embarrassed and guilty. Many unanswered questions ring in the victim's mind. Did it really happen? Why did it happen to me? Maybe I just imagined it. Was it really rape? Can I tell my family or friends? What will people think? How can we psychologically, physiologically, mentally, Rudo, address this and begin to make it easier, especially for men?
There's just one remedy. Talk about it, report it, seek help. My understanding is with each day that goes after sexual assault has occurred, it's a day deeper into stress. If it was an illness, if Sarah in the Bible had no child for 3 years, it would be, just 3 years, 10 years, but because of the length of time, the gravity of the issue was compounded, and such is sexual assault, and especially in the stereotype with males, because it is almost taboo to talk about. He can stand in front of a bunch of other guys and they will laugh at him or believe that it cannot happen. So the gravity is even worse for him. So we propose psychotherapy, counseling, and where psychotherapy is not just confined to that one person, but also to their social circle, the immediate family. They need to appreciate what he's going through so that they are able to support him. It might not be the family, but somebody else that he feels will be a pillar of support for him, and we are available to offer that kind of therapy for him. And I must also say it is long-term.
We will come back to that, but we just want to link that to the question that I asked before the break. Does time affect outcomes legally?
Time matters. More so in sexual cases of sexual abuse. In this particular case, if I were the prosecutor, I would charge the perpetrator with several offenses: aggravated indecent assault, deliberate transmission of HIV, obstruction of justice. This minor was paid $20 and told not to report. If he reported, he was told he would be arrested again. Now, all those offenses, they require evidence. One thing that a medical exam does is it looks at, deformities, injuries, physical injuries, etc. But it doesn't tell you who did it, right? If we were to send this minor for medical examination on the day, or perhaps a day after, perhaps the medical examiners will be able to pick samples of semen. That's DNA that would link the perpetrator. In this particular case, 4 years down the line, you're not going to find it. There is also assault. I would also charge, if I were the prosecutor, I would also add a fourth charge of assault, because this child was beaten up before he was raped. But the physical injuries that may be evidence of common assault would no longer be visible 4 years down the line. The medical examiners would not be able to pick it. Physically, you won't be able to see that. That's what happens when you delay reporting. But it's quite common. particularly for minors like Tendai, they don't have the courage, they don't know the law, they don't know where to start.
And this particular child is orphaned. He started his conversation by saying, both my parents are late. Saka mwana nirera,
Yes.
who is being shoved from one household to another, and is living upenyu wekutamburira chaiwo chaiwo. It breaks my heart.
He probably blames himself as well. You saw one of the things he said was, when I was, after the ordeal, after I was given the $20, I said, thank God I have escaped it. He probably thought he was in the wrong, he was guilty, so he thought it was a favor maybe, being treated the way he was treated and given $20 to leave the police station. Only later did he realize that this was
But
wrong.
even if he had been guilty, Dr. Musa, let's say he had been guilty and had done this, would it have, does what happened to him warrant, does having been guilty warrant what happened? Is just
Absolutely not. Even if this minor child was found guilty, tried and convicted, these 4 offenses I have mentioned would still remain.
they would still
They
stand.
would still remain even if he was found guilty.
But that, now I want to come back to you, Rude, and talk about time. It's because of time that we now know that he is a very sick child. I'm privy to his medical process because we are working with him. How then does psychosocial support take away what is happening in the physical?
It doesn't quite take it away. There is a psychological process which is called somatization, which is a long-term effect of intense psychosocial trauma, and it manifests itself in one being ill, nasi ndakunzwa chakati mangwana ndakunzwa, just being of poor health. Unogona kungotanga kungorwara by all sorts of things. And in this child's instance, because ane futi an underlying condition of HIV, muna anogona kuva prone to opportunistic infections, because there's that process of somatization which is happening. Nyama yakurwadziwa nekuda kwezvakaitika mukati mepfungwa dzake. And so it's not helping the situation. We will provide counseling, we will provide psychotherapy, but the intention or the objective at the end of the day is to develop some kind of coping mechanism. We can't take away what happened, but we can certainly teach you to hold your head up above the water, to go forward in life, and kana wangu wamboita derail, to get you back on track and happen and proceed with your life regardless of what happened in the past. We cannot take it away. We can only teach you how to move on stronger.
Chief Superintendent, very briefly, I know that if indeed something like this did happen within the police, within the remits of the police institution, the police are very strict. And you have your own internal legal system that you would deal with concerning any of your own police officers. Do you want to just outline in a case like this or in any other case, yekuti mpurisa ane zvaita zvapruvio ndiye azviita, how does that process work of just discipline and access to justice for?
In the police, you know, those two systems will run parallel. Like the one, the perpetrator here is now charged with the sexual offense of this boy. So it means that this one will have to go to the magistrate court. But at the same time, the organization looks at the police officer and also looks at what he has done and its impact on the police and on our discipline. And then the police officer is also charged administratively within the police. But those two processes are independent of each other. They are independent.
But
it doesn't mean that if the magistrate court finds the police officer not guilty, it means that the police officer, the system in the police will acquit him. They are totally independent.
Or vice versa. It doesn't
Yes.
mean that if he's found guilty in one, he'll be found guilty in the
Yes,
other as well.
yes.
But just, I'm very angry, and I'm being very disciplined.
Rightly so.
In not
because such
expressing
cases,
how I'm feeling inside, because I just feel that Dr. Musa, maybe there are gaps in our legal system, maybe there are gaps, Rudo, in our social system, maybe abuse is not properly understood. Is there some level of reform that's needing to happen? You are our legal mind. Put it together, reconcile it for me. You usually do that very well for me.
It's a range of issues, Rejoice. The social and the legal together. The attitudes also coming in as a third issue. Like I mentioned earlier, we have ways of treating children who are accused of committing offenses. Granted, we don't have a Child Justice Act. The cabinet recently approved a bill, so hopefully soon we will have one. But there are rules, there are stipulations, there are limitations that we have to abide with. But we also have the police systems. There is a training issue, that is also attendant. How do police officers attend to such cases? How should they behave? Do they know how to behave? If they behave in an untoward manner, are the internal remedies effective to be able to root out such kind of practices once and for all and to set examples, right? So it's a whole range of issues. There is also a social side of the whole issue. When you are reporting a minor of this age and you are allowing the police to come and take them because they have supposedly stolen your money, it's also a parenting issue there. So it's a range of legal and social issues.
Madam Banda, when we went out and had this conversation with Tendai, we then went round and just did a bit of research and a bit of homework on trying to understand how communities perceive issues like this, how they comprehend them and how they take them in. And we found that generally it's very difficult for males to report. People would rather shy away from reporting and stay at home and remain quiet. But there's somebody out there who has been raped and does not know what to do. What is the process that they should go through?
When a person has experienced sexual abuse, the only point in the Zimbabwe Republic Police is that you have to come and report. That's the starting point. But we have got this referral system. It depends on where you want to start to report. We don't really mind where you want to start to go and report. So if you have been sexually abused and you feel you need maybe medical assistance first, then you can go to the hospital. You can go to adult rape clinic here. Rudo will help you. And they will know exactly what they will do. They will always inform the police officer. At these public hospitals, there are always police officers there. So should you want to go and report, they will always inform the police that we've got a case here, and then the documentation starts. So if you report at a police station, at every police station in Zimbabwe, we've got the victim-friendly unit. So if you go maybe at Arada Central and you say you want to go and report a case at the victim-friendly unit, they are supposed to just direct you to victim-friendly unit and you go and report your case.
Dr. Musa talked about a gap in terms of training and knowledge within our police system of what to do. Do you want to make a comment on that?
Yes, gaps are there, and they are now being rectified because training was sort of like specialized. So the new curriculum that is now in place now, the pre-service curriculum that is now being used, I think starting this year, it will ensure that all police officers are trained to be victim-friendly, to be human rights officers, everybody, regardless whether they are going to work in homicide or in victim-friendly unit, but they should know. So that's how the training is going to be like. Because usually that victim-friendly component was usually reserved for those who were in the victim-friendly sections. But it was now seen that everybody should be a victim-friendly officer. If
Amen.
you are at a charge office and people come and report, that's our first point of call. They need to find a police officer who will listen to them, who will empathize with them, who will know exactly what to do with them, who will not judge them, will not humiliate them, and will also give them directions on where to go. That's the type of police officer we look forward to.
And that will be an amazing police officer. It will be so good to see police officers that begin to serve us and respect us as citizens. Ukaona vari mumakembu muya vachityoka vachiita sei kumabosi avo. I wish they would begin to do that in the public domain. But Rudo, do you want to just give your final closing remarks concerning this particular conversation and what you're doing as ARC and what's available at ARC?
Thank you. I think the first thing I would want to say is whenever it happens, pazvaitikira taura, report sexual assault within 72 hours to your nearest health facility, to your nearest police station. The victim-friendly system is compact. They will know kuti it's within 72 hours. Manya kuchipatara topedzisa paperwork if need be kana wazobetserwa. Because like our legal expert said, evidence is lost with each minute that goes by tisina kuicapture. And we could have prevented HIV, dayanga akakurumidza kuripota. We could have prevented the strain, the prolonged psychosocial challenges. But at the adult rape clinic, we are there to assist. We have a toll-free line. Wherever anybody is in Zimbabwe, they can call our toll-free line, access pama social media platforms. We will be able to direct munari kuVic Falls tinokuudza kwekuenda, munari pakati tinokuudza. We have on speed dial Chief Superintendent Banda, tikatovafonera kuti kune nyaya yastika kwakati vanoziva kuti vanotibatsira sei. So please people, ngatite come out and talk about it immediately.
Chief Superintendent Muripa speed dial, which is really comforting to know that she's just at the other end of the phone. Could you want to just give your closing remarks concerning the conversation that we've been having?
Yes, thank you. I think I will conclude by saying we encourage people to come and report early, especially our male people in the country. They should feel free to come and report. The law is not doesn't look at who you are. It just defines the offense. So if that has happened to you, then come and report it early, so that at least we get to arrest whoever has done it without losing much evidence along the way.
And finally, you, Dr. Musa, your closing remarks?
Well, just two things. I'm very happy to hear from the Chief Superintendent about the reforms around training, because one of the concerns that we kept having was the rollover of trained specialized officers who then leave, and they were always gaps. So I'm very happy to hear that there are moves to mend that. And secondly, just to thank you for telling the stories, because in addition to having Rudo and offering their services, the police doing what they do, we also need the people to know what it is that they can do when they are faced with such ordeals. And I think you are coming in and closing that gap. So thank you so much.
And thank you all very much for the work that you're doing. We would like for you to come back at some point, Dr. Musa, and tell us where we're at, what happens with this particular case, because I think our viewers will be vying to want to know what happened. But thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for coming through, Superintendent. And Rudo, thank you for the amazing work that you're doing with ARC. I hope that what we discussed here is going to help a lot of sexual assault survivors out there, to help them come out, to help them report, to help them speak. It can be extremely difficult for survivors to come forward and share their story. They are usually concerned that no one will believe me. Say in this case, this young man would have been thinking, maybe so it's just for people to know that there's a separation between Mosha reporter. So we are really excited that we are beginning and continuing to tell the story. It is the job of our society to support survivors of sexual assault, to tell them that it was not their fault, remind them that their service providers such as the police, the judiciary and healthcare providers who are able to support them, to help them heal from their experience or to help them cope. As Rudo put it, it took Tendai nearly 4 years to report, but now that he has had the courage to speak out and seek justice, if there's someone out there who's watching right now and you've gone through what Tendai went through, or you know somebody who went through what Tendai went through, please report to the nearest police station. Justice delayed is justice denied, but just when it's reported, justice will be accessed. On that note, we have come to the end of our show for today. To enjoy more of our programming, please follow and like our ZTN Facebook page. Kindly subscribe to our YouTube account, Zim Papers TV Network, and follow us on Twitter at ZTN News. Remember, COVID-19 is still with us, and as we get vaccinated, let's not forget to mask up, to sanitize, and to avoid unnecessary gatherings. Follow all precautions as per Ministry of Health and WHO guidelines. Do not put your family, friends, and colleagues at risk. From me, Dinonzi Rejoice, Naranda Makawa, Siposihle Ndlovu on Sign Language, and the production crew behind the scenes, thank you for watching, and do stay safe.